Welcome back to the Tree Surgeons podcast. Today, I've got Lee Morris from Morris Arb. Welcome to the podcast, Lee.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. So, Lee, tell me, how long have you been in the industry and how did you get into the Arb industry?
Okay, so we're 10 years old on December the 14th this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a very interesting 10 years for sure. How did I get in? Well, I initially started in construction. 2008 saw the end of that.
Yeah.
Sort of scratched around doing bits and pieces here and there. I'd always been quite entrepreneurial, but really didn't have much direction. My brother was already serving as a utility arborist for a tree company called Morris Arb Tree Specialists. They were working on the Western Power contract. I got an in with them. Yeah, and pretty much within the first week or so, I turned to my team leader and I was like, okay, just run it by me. So we come to the same sites every 3 to 5 years. We have to clear the power lines for safety and the trees grow back again. And he was like, yeah. And I said, just one more time, run that past me again. Because when you've been in the construction industry and you realise the economy affects everything, supply and demand of house building, the fact that there was this recurring work going on that I was completely oblivious to be honest, until I started in the industry, that got the cogs turning. So I started sort of developing some strategies and some business plans myself, very, very much in its infancy. I was very much a novice. I presented some of these ideas to the management team at Morris Arb. They disregarded them. I completely understand why. I was an inexperienced junior team leader at that point. But then there's just more and more I'd realised I wanted to do it a certain way. I thought there was a real potential to do it properly, more professionally. Yeah, I struck out on my own and gave it a go.
Amazing. So you started on your own, and how did things go from the beginning?
Well, it's quite an interesting story how we got started. So I had no money at all. I'd just come out of a pretty rotten relationship with a crazy individual. And I was living on my mum's sofa. I didn't have a penny to my name. I'd left Morris and had a bit of a dispute with a new team leader they brought in who was the typical type. He said yes to the management team all the time, but didn't deliver on site. Me and him didn't get it on, so I left. Always destined to sort of run my own operation, I think. Probably a bit more of my own ego at play there. So yeah, I got a meeting, put a business plan together, got a meeting with a bank. I went in to negotiate the finance, which would be, I asked for £20,000 to start the business off. And he sat there and he went through it all and he said, actually, I really like your idea. I like you. I can give you 15,000. I sat back in my chair and I looked down the corridor and my accountant, who's a friend of mine, was sort of going like, take it, mumbling, take it. And I was like, I just knew I couldn't do it without the extra 5k. I'd really studied the numbers and it was going to be tight anyway. So I just said, look, I'm going to have to decline. I'm sorry. I really need the £20,000. This bank manager sort of like sat back in his chair and went, oh, you're ambitious, aren't you? And I was like, I just need that money. I've done all the numbers, all the costs. And he goes, okay, we'll do 20 then.
Perfect.
And I remember
Amazing.
looking down the corridor and my mate was dancing around going, yeah, you did it.
Well, that's really important because sometimes we just accept what it is
that
they give us and that's just negotiation, isn't it, to be going backwards and forwards. So yeah.
Just knew the numbers. I'd worked so hard on the business plan and it's probably the most important business plan you'll ever write is the first one. You have no idea what you're doing.
And so many people don't write business plans. They just sort of do it on a whim and then expect they almost lick their finger and put it in the sky and go, right, what am I doing?
Well, I've done subsequent business plans after that have been just like the same thing. A rudimentary annual number that we're going to make, which in reality is not a great way of doing it. But so it started with two of us. We were operating out of my mum's garage. Eventually convinced my brother to come on board as well, to leave Mercy, and he came and joined us. We went to 5 lads in the first 6 months because I got onto a utility contract early, just subcontracting to ground control.
Yeah.
So
how did you find that?
Yeah, it was good. The red tape getting on was a bit more complex than I realised, but it was actually thanks to a friend of mine, Sarah Ellis. She's now a director on the infrastructure side at Ground Control doing the rail. She did manage back then. She was the contract manager for the Western Power contract. So a relationship I built with her while I was at Mercy and still paid off. It's the old, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, she helped the transition and we did really well on it, to be honest.
Yeah, because ground control get quite a bad rap, but I've worked from on and off, and I think it's only when we had a really stressed time that we end up falling out with them. But I don't think that was on them, and they're obviously quite a big sort of corporate machine that does very well. But what was your experience, and what has your experience like been working for them? Because I've heard some good stories as well, but obviously you hear a lot of negative stuff out there. So.
I have to be honest. We've worked with ground control, and we still do. Nearly 9.5 years now.
Yeah.
the team that we work with predominantly on the resilience contract, which is now National Grid, was Western Power. The team's great. They always pay when they're going to pay. Some of the project managers we've got, Nick Kane in particular, is fantastic. Some of the CDMs as well are excellent. I really like a relationship I have with Steve Amerson as well. Some of the directors he's got below him.
Yeah, I know Steve. Yeah, Steve was a good guy.
They're great. They're clever. They're very clever blokes. They're very determined on what they want to deliver. I think it's very easy sometimes from the subby's point of view to criticise the principal contractors because your business model's not working.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've been in that position. It's the powers that be are messing us around when I've really analysed it and gone, no, you haven't got it right.
You know, we were talking earlier about my demise in 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, that's when we fell out of ground control. And that's why I said that was because my business model wasn't working.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't in a good place. We'd ballsed up on the contract previously with a different contractor. And then we went to them when we were already stressed out and not in a good place as a business. And our model wasn't working. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. I mean, the caveat to that is that with a lot of the large principal contractors, I think they are, I'm probably speaking a little out of turn here, but it is what it is. They probably are a little bit detached from the reality of our situation nowadays.
Yeah.
There just simply isn't a resource there that they think.
Yeah.
They've built their large business models being solely dependent on subcontractors, and they very much treat you like you are a field team of theirs. You're there at their disposal.
Yeah.
As a managing director, my company might only be sub £1 million at the moment. I might have all these great ambitions, but when you're being talked down to by a contract manager and you're thinking, I'm a managing director, at least have some sort of form of respect for me. You can quite easily take your resource and put it somewhere else.
Yes.
So
especially when we're in a sort of shortage as we are right now.
So the demand for tree surgeons, in particular in the infrastructure realm, and even more in particular in the utility realm, it's so finite. There's no new lads coming in. The companies that are around are struggling to make it work. There's a group of us that are sort of doing it quite well. But as you know yourself, it is a challenge. And I think some of the PCs that are focusing on making sure that the relationships between them and their subbies are good, and they're looking to make life not easy, this is business, but making it as smooth as possible for their subbies to deliver for them, they're going to be the ones that do better in the long run.
Yeah.
The ones that turn into a more confrontational, so you've got collaboration, which always works, or you can be confrontational, and tyrannical is probably an excessive word, but sometimes some of the PCs can be a little bit like, we will take the work and we can give the work.
But I think you said it a minute ago about relationships, these different names that you named. And I think that is what business is made up of, isn't it? It's about building relationships with people and strong relationships. And that's where I think the wins and the losses happen, when you get maybe two personalities that clash, or you just go, right, how do we get past this? And how do we build a working relationship together so we can have a win-win? They make money, we make money, everyone's happy.
Exactly, that's what we're doing, isn't it? That's what we're doing in business, is we're there to make money. I think, again, I don't want to keep bashing the PCs because they make up the whole host of my clients. We're not a contract-centered company. We subcontract. Yeah. My mission is to deliver reliable, compliant, and quality operational resources. But I think in terms of the PCs, potentially where gaps may fall is you've got mid-level managers up to sort of low-level directors that aren't business savvy. They don't know the numbers. They don't know what it's costing us to run companies. And also they're working 9 till 5 and then they're going home. So there's probably that gap that appears when companies become too big. They're so detached from the realities of what their subbies are going through. So I've had arguments with some PCs where they'll go, well, you've only been on site for 4 hours today. We're like, we worked the 4 hours without dinner, but my lads started at 6:30 this morning. We do an hour of pure assessments, vehicle checks, doing all our compliance. Then it's an hour and a half drive to site. Then we do the risk assessment process. We log on. Then we start cutting. Then it's time to we're going to finish by about 2:00-ish at the latest, so that the lads can be back for 3:30, because my lads are equally on contracted hours. So you've got the same project managers, for instance, or surveyors that won't pick up the phone to you after 4:30, expecting your lads to still be out cutting at 4:30.
And there's got to be room for maintenance, for being able to do, aerial rescue training, like the amount of stuff that we should be doing. Like I've got our Arb audit tomorrow, and I know we get on with the Arb Association. I'm sure it's going to go fine, but there's certain stuff that we've got to do for that to be able to suffice our accreditation. And it's trying to fit all that around, also making money and it being a commercially viable business. So, yeah.
So we were having this conversation a little minute ago about trying to get rid of the cowboys and the pirates from the industry. And I think there needs to be more appreciation on just exactly how much work goes into just delivering. Let's break it right down to a unit, an individual unit, 3 men, a 4x4, trailer, chipper, and all of the appropriate equipment and compliance in terms of paperwork and IT, just to get that unit to site compliant 5 days a week, and then for them to go and carry out some very complex operations. It's a massive effort. I think it's almost looked upon that it's just tree work.
Yeah.
But then the same people that look at it in that gaze are the same people when something goes wrong going, oh, why haven't you got all these systems in place? And I think they're the first people to tell you, well, it's a very dangerous job that we do and you're all very professionals, but then down on price or...
Exactly that. And I think there's 2 challenges in this industry, isn't there? There is larger companies trying to win contracts for next to nothing and then expecting to sub it out for next to nothing. And then there is the pirates and the cowboys who are, or even the people that maybe are a bit ignorant to what you can charge or what you should charge, who are doing work for 400, 500 quid a day for 2 or 3 men. Yeah. I think the worst I saw it this summer was someone priced for 3 men for a day, 600 quid. And I was like, that's £200 a man a day. Like,
that's 20 years ago.
Yeah,
prices,
exactly that. How does anyone make any money out of that? And I think that's obviously the biggest challenge. But we've digressed slightly. So you were about 5 or 6 people quite quickly. And then how did the growth of the business go then?
It stalled a while. So about 3 or 4 years into my business, I actually ended up fighting a custody battle for my daughter, which I won, which was sort of forced upon me. So it was just
to deal with the business as well.
Crazy, yeah. My mum and my brother worked for me, and
nice family company.
Yeah, I have to give a lot of dues to those 2 because they proper do support me, which is, it gets me a little emotional. Yeah, they do proper support me, and that was a real tough time. Any money I'd built up personally was completely wiped out. I think all in all it cost about 29k.
Wow.
Yeah, completely different subject.
But the thing is a different subject, but this is what happens in business, is that business happens, but then also life happens around us. And it's having the right, being able to deal with both, because it's a challenge. Like, I think the biggest misconception is that people think once you get to a boss, you're a millionaire and it's easier, but it's not, because you still have the life problems that everyone else has, because this is what life is about, isn't it? And you've then got to deal with trying to run a business. So
yeah, it's insane. I mean, so that period just taught me one thing, which was team's really important. Having the right team around you to support you when them sort of moments are kicking off. But so we stalled a little bit. I was very much operational, so I was still climbing, still very much in the day-to-day running of things. And we ended up putting all our eggs in one basket with one principal contractor, and even worse than that, one contract with that principal contractor. So we were as niche as you can get. We bought a load of equipment to sort of operate on those contracts. We were hiring individuals because it was a very specialised contract. It was the resilience contract. We hired very high-end operators, which, as you know, having a very top-heavy wage structure just doesn't work with a business. And then the equipment we bought along, and then we've had certain problems on those contracts. We've had a couple of non-compliances ourselves, which
it happens.
I took that very, very hard, because as I was starting to step back from the tools a little bit, we had like an unblemished record. And I was really proud of it, almost egotistical. And I was driving very hard for higher numbers. Workflow was very inconsistent. It was feast and famine. 1 month it was just crazy. Or 1 quarter would be insane. January, February, March was usually mental.
Yes.
Then it would just completely drop off.
Usual summer drop off.
But then when you incorporate the weather with those quarters as well, and crops and all sorts of stuff like that. As you know, with utilities, it's rural. So that was sort of about 3 years ago, and then there's COVID to navigate as well, which was interesting. But we got up to about 9, 10 operators, and then last year we had a particularly bad year. So as I was explaining to you earlier, National Grid bought Western Power out, and in doing that, they changed their financial year around and their budgets, and it left a load of us utility cutters just completely high.
Which I've seen happen in the utility industry specifically. And because a lot of people have asked me this year, should I get into utility? Because all the utility cutters seem to be busy. And I think it's a really good way. And I think what you've done there, which is niching to start off with, is one of the ways to grow a business, is to get a constant stream of work, whether it's utility or any constant stream of work. And then you can then work out business over a number of years to be able to then grow. But as you say, the challenge with it is that there is the budgets resetting, which happen every April, which we've had with various different contracts over the year. It's the feast and famine, winter's busy but wet, and it becomes with its own set of challenges, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know, but that's the main takeaway from all of that period was, just diversify.
Yeah.
And diversify not also just with contracts, but something I learned from a great book that I read called The Empire Builder by Adam Coffey, where he talks about low, medium and high complexity operations.
Yeah.
And actually most of the larger companies, how they build operationally is from the lower to medium complexity. Mm-hmm. We were all higher complexity.
Yes.
So if you imagine it like a pyramid, your base should be lower complexity, medium complexity, and the very top of the pyramid is high complexity.
Yeah.
So trying to scale down is like a lot harder than scaling uphill. Yeah. So a lot of the work I've been doing over the last 12 months is starting to get more lower complexity, higher complexity operations, which is a twofold win. One, it's higher volumes and more recurring in work. If you've got a certain standard of a company, you are head and shoulders above the competitors rather. But also from recruitment purposes, it's easier to get people from unskilled onto site making money in a shorter time frame. With the utilities, you're probably looking 6 to 12 months. You might pick up a lad and he might be very talented, and within 6 months he could be climbing, probably doing quite well for himself. But because of the authorization process, it could be 12 to 18 months before you get him operational. Yeah. And keeping them, because they're not bringing the money in then to suit a position like that, they either get bored and leave.
And it's getting them to understand the compliance part of it, which I've found is the most challenging, because obviously you can go and do domestic work, which a lot of arborists come from, where they're not having to worry about Lola, they're not having to wear a full high vis, climb on 2 ropes, they're not having to worry about setting the site up, putting the cones out, having a spill kit, first aid kit. The utility stuff is high compliance, isn't it? Yeah. And we had a couple of red cards, and it was when we were a stressful time. It's very similar. A year before that, we'd been told we were one of the best contractors on the contract. And a year later, we got 3 red cards in 3 months, and they were talking about throwing us off. And there were for silly things like not ticking a box on a method statement, or not. What was one of them? I think they just didn't have the sign, the cones and the tape around the site, but everything was still being done safely. And to most people, and especially people listening to this podcast, they'd be like, "What, you got thrown off site for not ticking one box on a method statement?" But that's what happens, because they are wanting to deliver the safest possible work. So it all comes down, doesn't it? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we had with team members coming onto the power lines, is they would come from even some council contracts. They never audit you. And then suddenly you've got an auditor coming once a week, pulling the whole van out. Yeah. And the guys would start to dread it, wouldn't they? So
going right through the climbing kits to individual carabiners, making sure every piece of rope, all of your prusik loops are ID'd. Yeah. And I actually find that that's brilliant, in my opinion, because it lifts your standard. You're aware these people are coming around and they are going to find something. That's what they're paid to do. And it just lifts the standard of your work up. Yeah, and I think, just backtracking slightly from the domestic point of view, it is a constant frustration for me when speaking to domestic friends of mine and other people in the industry, is they sort of look down their noses at utility cutters because it's clearance, not appearance. A lot of the reductions we do are not, British standard. But it's a safety measure job.
Siding to the sky.
Yeah, exactly. But they're getting wrong, in my opinion, is the same tree work and level of tree work and climbing and crown reductions. If we can do them, we'll be doing them. But the same complexity in the rigging techniques, the dismantling we're dealing with, it's all the same as domestic tree work, but we've got a high voltage power line. We've probably got a public highway that we've got to deal with, a railway that's adjacent to it. We've got a water course to deal with. We've also got other key infrastructures we're working around. And then when we take that and we go, it's in the arse end of nowhere, it's down some canyon in the Peak District, or it's up the top of some ridiculous hill, in North Manchester, or it's down in some jungle infested. But then it becomes like, this is not low level operations. This is the very top, in my opinion. Yes, the quality of the tree work in terms of what the product left behind is, that can't be helped by the arborist.
That is just the way it is. There's a power line there. It's coming through, and these have got to be cleared. And I agree, because I started in power lines for Chris Orr 20 years ago. And one of the things that I liked, and I always say to my guys and trainees when they come on, is if we could do power line work, it's a great place to learn to climb. Because like generally what happens on a domestic site is you get your lead climber or your subby climber who does everything, and then you get your second climber and your groundie on site. And because you've got to get the job done by a certain amount of time, the groundie and the second climber barely get a look in. There's one tree to fell or do, and that's it. Whereas when you're on a 11 kV, 33, whatever span it is, there are multiple trees to climb. So you can put your good climber up the hairy stuff, and then the second climbers can go and climb the Cat D and all that kind of stuff. And they can just climb. And I remember being over like 33 kV lines and having to work out how to get it off and down and not touch the 33 kV line. And that was a skill in itself to be able to cut, hold, whatever, and then be able to throw it in and get it away from that line. I mean, it's all brilliant experience and learning to be able to...
You will just become... This is where a lot of subcontracting climbers or domestic climbers, and then on paper they are the bee's knees and they come highly recommended, and they can do a great beach crown reduction, but you bring them to a time sensitive shutdown that's in the arse end, and it's been a 2-mile trekking with 90 kilos of gear on your back, and then you're climbing alongside utility cutters that are going bash they're one after the other, big climb, spikes on, and before long you can see the domestic climber or subby is starting to fall behind, and you're thinking there are levels to this. Like don't get me wrong, there's rubbish in every industry, in every sector. But the high-end arborists in the infrastructure, the real top-end arborists that are dealing with network rail projects, grid projects, SPEM projects, that are doing the large takedowns, rigging around, because it might just not just be the power line. There might be a power line, a canal, a public highway and a railway all in one site.
And a substation.
And a substation. And there might be multiple teams on one project. And there's ash dieback trees. We've got mechanization on there.
It's chaos.
It is chaos, but there is some real talented chaps doing definitely. Some really difficult work. So I think it's really easy to look down your nose at the utilities because of the appearance of the work left behind, but don't diminish the quality of the work.
I agree, and I think it's a huge part of our industry anyway, and I think people do turn their nose down at it quite often, but I think how you built your business by niching to start off with, and you learned a similar lesson to me, but not as hard, which we were mainly SSE for a long time, 90% of it, and then when it all started to unfold and they didn't spend as much money with us and we had all our eggs in that basket, that's when it became challenging. So then, as you say, diversifying is key, but I think that niche at the beginning is really important in business, and then working out business over those years, working out the different life challenges at the same time, and then being in a position where you can then start being able to win other work and use that experience, because once you get your guys to that level, when they then go and work on other contracts, like other people are like, wow, this is really efficient, these guys are good, the health and safety is all in place, because that's what we learned from being on the power lines. We've got the health and safety pretty much tied down, always room for improvement. So what do you think the biggest challenge in the last 10 years has been? Obviously we talked around the niching, but for yourself, what do you think is the biggest challenge been running and building and growing your business?
Just the business, the actual business, knowing the numbers, not having clear strategies. That's fundamentally the difference between a company that's going to succeed and not succeed. You can carry it so far on your own back. This is another thing, I think, just backtracking slightly on, if we talk about subby climbers and people, you're like a Premier League footballer with tree surgery. You have a finite lifespan.
Yes, I've always said that. You need 18 to 35, really.
Exactly. Well, I'm 37. I've just hung up my kit for the final time, although I haven't been climbing as much lately over the last couple of years, but it's a difference. You're running out of time, and I think if you haven't stacked up other talents or other experiences, other skill sets alongside your ARB knowledge, you'll come to a brick wall. And all of a sudden, there's a new climber that's outpacing you. He's young, he's fresh, he's not charging as much as you, and you're going to get outdone by him. So I realised that you can carry it so far operationally on your own shoulders, but if you want to scale the business and turn it into an actual business and not a job, you need to know and understand your numbers. And that's been the biggest challenge. So took on a really great mentor for a performance coach, and she put me in touch with my mentor now, which is a great gentleman called Mark Ledger. He's a complete numbers orientated. He's just a magician with a spreadsheet, which I've actually come to really enjoy. Particularly growth modeling and forecasting, really refining your numbers, working out what's working, what's not working. So that's been the biggest challenge. Once you take that challenge on head on and use it, it's in your skill set, so in your tool belt, so to speak. Yeah, that's when you can really start to go, oh, this has got a bit of legs.
I think you're right there, because I think my biggest failure in business was that I didn't know my numbers. And there was lots of different things that I've learned now, but I didn't know my numbers. And similar to you, I got a mentor, and the main thing we worked on was numbers from day one. And I hated spreadsheets. I didn't do well at school. And he always said to me, Henry, one day you'll turn into a spreadsheet pervert. And I was like, nah, I doubt it. And now I've, like, you open my browser and I've just got Google Sheets all the way along, and I'm just tracking the metrics. But like, the most important thing I've learned the last couple of years is it's all well and good knowing the numbers, but it's what you do with that information. That like, you can track numbers, but it's taking that piece of information and then going, right, I've now got this piece of information, we're winning 30% of our quotes, or whatever that piece of information is. What do I need to do to now change that to make that better? How do we win 40% of our quotes without dropping our rates? And it's using those numbers to really help you. And you mentioned different mentors. How pivotal have mentors been to your business?
Game change for the business. I don't think, in terms of the actual operational carrying out the tree surgery work, there's nothing that a mentor is going to teach you don't already know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with that is, and I think when I've always talked to people, is we're all very good operators. We all know how to deliver tree work. Like, I think every tree surgery business, I'd say 80% of them in this country, unless they're a cowboy, probably are very good at the delivery and understanding that. It's the business bit that we're not so good at.
That's what kills you off, because you get so good at being the operator, you become a bottleneck in your own business. And you don't even realise it. You're completely worn out, and it becomes this, like, actually, when you look at the hours you work, and it becomes this low-paid, highly intensive job you're doing, and you're like, you're baffled, like, why am I so burnt out? And like, but mentors open your eyes to simple analogy: work on your business, not in your business. So then my second challenge has been team building. Building a second tier management team to take over the day-to-day operations I've only just really started completing that now. I added probably the last component, which is a great gentleman called Mark Totman. He used to be a contract manager at Ground Control for their resilience contract. He's been sort of semi-retired for a while. Managed to talk him in on LinkedIn to sort of coming in and acting like he's going to spend a bit of time organising our structure, and then he's going to mentor my ops lads behind, which is my brother Adam and Paul McCulloch.
That's really smart. Nice.
They're brilliant. They are fantastic lads, but again, they're tree surgeons, they're operators that have got the aptitude and mindset to manage. But it's like, I'm trying to teach them something I don't even know how to do. I've run operations from the hip, store it all in my head. I've got ADHD, so I have this crazy capacity to hyper focus on things and just be able to sort of roll with it, which is not how you should run a business, because your team are going like, oh, what is he on today? What's the plan? So bringing Mark in has been a key. It actually was suggested to me by my partner, Sasha, was to bring Mark in, or find someone of Mark's capabilities to bring some structure to the operations, the day-to-day. Because what you'll find is, lads, a lot of people that work in businesses, they want to do a good job. They're not coming to do a crap job, and those that just get rid of them early. You just get gone. Quickly, but they do want to do a good
Most
job.
People just need to be shown the way, right?
They just want a standard operating procedure, A, B, C, D, whatever it is, and tell me what to do and I'll do the job. And then it's just about building the culture around to suit that. So, so I think the answer to your question, like, mentors are pivotal to take it to the next level.
I agree. I think people always ask me my success in the last 5 years. They're like, you've just absolutely killed it in the last 5 years. I've taken a lot of action, but with the guidance of other people, and I've always looked for people that have potentially walked the path that I want to walk, and then gone, right, tell me how you did that, because I think we can work it out. And like, I've been in business 16 years, you've been 10 plus years. Like, there's so much that you work out for yourself, but then you get to a point where you either pay in time by spending another 10 years working it out, or you just you put your ego to one side and go, can you just show me how we do this? Can you show me a spreadsheet?
No one's coming up with this stuff on their own. Not even the high flyers, even like Elon Musk, very tip of the iceberg. He's reading books. He's learning with other people. He's got a team.
Did someone tell me his mentor? Is it the guy from Microsoft? He's got a mentor. I can't remember who it is, but it's someone like the guy from Microsoft. But he has a mentor, and he's like the most successful one.
It's accountability. Somebody to go, okay, we made a plan. You know, we were going to hit certain numbers. You know, we were going to introduce different initiatives. Why haven't we done it? What's the bottle? You know, it's someone to hold that mirror up in front of you. It's like, so I've started to explore the strategy and leadership, mentoring, consulting sort of. It's something that turns me on as well. I very much love strategy. And I spoke to a gentleman the other day from up Scotland, runs quite a big tree firm, and he was asking for a bit of advice. And yeah, one of the things that I pointed out to him about having a mentor is really important, is that actually your mentor's not there to teach you anything about your job. They're there to act as your ally, to give you sort of the strategic template to make it better. Because if you're asking for a mentor, you probably do realize you need to change something. You probably know what it is you need to change. It's just structuring it. Because one of the best things about strategic planning is actually getting it all down on paper and seeing it in reality, rather than this swirling whirlpool of like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And it's just overwhelming.
It is, and because your head just bounces things around, and you're right. Like when you get it out on paper, or like what I kind of happen, the amount of calls I have with mentees on the mastermind, and they're talking about it, and then they suddenly answer it as they're talking about it, and it almost gets to the point where like, I've just answered my own question, haven't I? And
moment.
It's a hard moment, but you're someone who's completely neutral, not emotionally connected. It's not your wife, it's not your mum, it's not your dad, it's not your mates down the pub. It's completely neutral, that you can openly, vulnerably talk about everything that's going on, and then suddenly you kind of have the aha moments, and then you put a plan in place. And that's the planning part, right?
It's beautiful as well to see when you've had so many of the moments yourself. Like, the aha moments for me are always when I'm writing the next business plan or the next 3-year strategy. And it's like, a lot of the times people think that the strategies and that are for somebody else to read, and like it's for an investor or it's for your team. And yes, it is for those people. But actually the biggest value is what you learn just doing the process. So every time you go through a strategic process, you go through your vision, your mission, you go through your SWOT analysis, you go to strategic objectives, what your action plan is, do a bit of market analysis, all the way through to the end. You actually have a regimented timeline and process how you're going to carry it out. Each one of those steps fires up more questions for you to answer. And by the time you finish it, you're like, I know my business right now. 100%. I know every facet to it. And then you're able to articulate it then to the people that work for you or work with you in a clear and concise way, because you understand it properly. And it's just doing the process. And it can be scary. Sometimes you're like, it's just the starting. It just starts like compounding on itself. And then each new question is like, does that answer? And then there's a couple more questions. And before you know it, you've built this brilliantly tangible thing that you can now go to bat with.
And
I love it.
And the good thing with that is that you can stick to a plan. And my biggest fall down for years is I'm similar. I'm just exploring ADHD at the moment, and I'm very impulsive what I do, and I'm very like shiny penny, and I'll see something shining like a magnet. And since I've started doing planning, like the amount of times I'm like, I want to go and do this, and I want to go and do that. And it's something that distracts us from doing the stuff that's needed. Because actually, like when you strip business back, it's quite boring. You've got to be consistent. You've got to turn up and do the basics every single day. But when you kind of get into business, and especially like personalities like ours, you kind of want to go, but I don't want to just turn up and do the same thing every day.
I can't, honestly, to be honest, half the time. Because of my ADHD, any sort of routine tasks can be, it sounds like you're being lazy or you don't want to do it. It can be nigh on impossible sometimes. I get given a contract to read, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to take ages.
I'll just put it into ChatGPT now and go brief that to me.
That's great, actually. That might be a good tip to take over.
Upload it into ChatGPT and say, can you review this for me? And then also what I do is, I'm very similar to you. I wouldn't read a 20-page document. I'd give it to one of the girls in the office and say, or somebody like my wife who's very detail driven, and be like, can you read that and tell me the important bits out of it? Because I'm the same as you.
I think that's the key part with ADHD and being impulsive in nature. That's definitely the most important thing, is your team. So like, I'm very visionary and very strategic, very good at problem solving. And when I get onto something, my hyper focus is like a superpower. The other side to that is, once it comes to doing the execution on a day-to-day basis, I can become despondent. So that's why operations suited me perfectly, because you were always chasing, you were always on the move, and momentum's really important. Now I'm stepping back into a more strategic position. I really do need to lean on my team and make sure I give them clear, concise, probably a heavy...
They know the plan.
And then leave them to it. If your team are good and you're being consistent with how you communicate what you want, and you're being consistent in how you check in. If you've hired the right people, just get out of their way and let them do it. I think one of the main things Adam and Paul have been saying for a while, hence me getting Mark, is really get out of the way. They know what they need to do.
I would say majority of business owners are the bottleneck in their own business.
And they don't even know it
until
they're like that stressed, and they're like, why does everything have to flow through me? Oh, I'm the bottleneck.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I've done this year. Is I've still got my whole office team, my commercial manager, but I've exited myself from the day-to-day operations, so I can now work on the efficiency of the business, this podcast, the mastermind, other stuff, but I can still be driving it forward, but I'm not having to go out and price the work, I'm not having to go and do the work, but I still have an exciting role, because I'm similar to you. I can't just do the same thing every single day. I need something different. So tell me, how did you find out your ADHD? Has it been a lifelong thing, and how do you find dealing with that day to day?
So I've always known I've been slightly different.
Yeah.
I was a bit naughty in school. I've always been hyper climbing everything when I was a little kid. I'm driving my mum crazy probably. And I always find it difficult to maintain friendship groups until I got to an adult. So I can be just all or nothing sort of thing.
Yeah, I can relate to all of that.
But being like operationally minded, I mask it because momentum is key. If I've got momentum, you probably won't notice. You'll just think, God, he's very driven, hyper-focused, very much energy. But as actually what's driving that is a lot of inner stuff that's going on in your head. So the best way for me to sum up ADHD, for me, is it works in waves. You know, when everything's aligned and it's heading up, I've got super hyper focus. I'm energized. Just don't get in my way because I'm on it. The crux to that is I can come over the crest. Dopamine's hitting a complete max. I'm now I'm drained. Then I can become despondent, which I've learned to deal with, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I think the best way to give an analogy to it is it's like the momentum. When I've got momentum behind me on a task that I like doing, my energy is outwardly facing. When momentum subsides, it might even just be a lull while I'm waiting for things to happen. That energy can turn inwards, and then it can be I'm turning that energy against myself then, and it can be really, really debilitating. I think some of the energy levels that ADHD, it's like you have the energy levels because of the ADHD, but you also deplete those energy levels because you're like either all going forward or you're all internal. And it can be hard work.
It is hard. I like quite often I call myself the bipolar business owner, because in a day I'll go from being like massively happy, buzzing, to suddenly like crash. And my wife's always like, "You're just so high and low. Like 1 minute I can be absolutely buzzing, or I get to I'll talk to her in the morning and everything's flying, and I'll get to 7 o'clock in the evening and I'll be on the sofa and she'll be like, 'You're right,' and I'm like, 'Everything's terrible,' and I'll just like you say, deplete
to be them waves. It'll be you'll have
hard.
your own sort of your own unique. If you've got ADHD, and I'll definitely pursue finding out with the diagnosis, because I did earlier this year. So answering your question before, I ended a 9-year relationship with a partner I'd been with, and that was last year about September time. And so I moved to a new town with my daughter, who's lived with me obviously for the last 8 years. And I was just like an emotional wreck. And I didn't like a certain film was on, or a song came on, or if I thought about something, I had to be crying my eyes out. And I was like, what the hell is going on with me? What happened is I hadn't been true to myself for like 9 years. I'd been in a relationship that was really centered around my daughter and giving her a stable environment. And I was burying how I felt inside. And I decided to do therapy, to be honest. Best decision I've ever made.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, you go to America and people that are fine have got therapists, and they're very much more like, well, I've got a therapist because I want to ensure that I don't get to a bad place, rather than being reactive and getting to a depressed place or a stressed place or somewhere upset. And I think like one of the biggest things that happened with me is when I had my drug addiction, I started seeing counsellors, and I suddenly saw the benefit of that. And even now I have mindset coaches that I see, and different coaches and mentors. And I think therapy is all part of the unlocking of the mind to be able to get to the ultimate performance, isn't it?
It's brilliant. And you don't have to. So my therapist is actually also, she's clinically authorised to be a therapist, but she's also used to be a high-level executive, so she does do a bit of business. So being able to entwine the two doesn't make me, as an alpha male, feel a little bit like I'm too vulnerable. It makes me feel like I'm tackling two subjects at the same time. But essentially, therapy is a complete game changer. It really does. It draws attention to so many little traumas that you carry, little parts of you that you carry,
beliefs and things like that.
And you don't understand how much of an impact they're having on you. And it's not like all of a sudden you do therapy and they go away. You just become aware of them. And something that kept rearing its head was my despondency, hyper-focused despondency. And so she was like, you might have ADHD, you should get it diagnosed. So I did. It came back that I have. And at first it was a bit like, oh God, I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. And like I was a little bit, started becoming really aware of all the times I've been loud or disruptive or me or go away. And like, all the little things you play back in your head, like social scenarios or whatever. But then as I've got used to it, I now realize actually like I wouldn't want to be any other way. It makes up who I am. I've got the people I love in my life, my great group of friends, and they was so nice what they said to me, and particularly my brother was, Jesus Christ. Yeah, so he just said, and I said about the ADHD, he goes like, I don't care what they call it, you just leave. And I thought, that was really important.
Nice.
And it is, I think neurodiversity is out there. There's no real normal human. What even is that?
Especially in this industry as well.
You have to be a bit mental.
I think, we talked in our management meeting yesterday with all the whole team, and then I look at everyone on the mastermind, and I reckon I don't know what the stats are, but probably 80% of tree surgeons are probably ADHD, aren't they, on the spectrum of some sort. So
you've got to be.
Yeah.
But it's good. I mean, it makes you unique. And it gives you different perspectives, and like you say, we need people of all sorts of types. We've got, there's all different sorts of races, religions that they always focus on, but there is also neurodiversity. And if we were all the same type, it'd be pretty boring.
Life would be pretty boring if we were just all robots and just doing the same thing every day. Yeah, I mean, you're so right. I feel like with my ADHD, it explains a lot. When I've looked into it, very similar. Like I've looked through the diagnosis this year, and I'm like, yep. And I've talked to my mum, and I said to her the other day, was I always disruptive as a kid? She was like, from the moment you were born. And she was like, why? And I was like, because I'm thinking about ADHD. And she was like, I don't think you were. Why are you looking into that nonsense? And then about a week later, she went, now you're thinking about it. I think possibly you were. And for me, it's like going through the diagnosis is like, I don't think it's going to change my life massively, but it just gets to understand me and also my performance. And I think the one thing that we have as business owners that we have complete control over is our own performance and how we turn up every day. And I call it like the roots to a tree, or the foundations to a building. Our performance, if we turn up and we're not performing well as a director business owner, we're not got the right energy, we're sluggish, we're not thinking straight, then that is going to create even bigger bottleneck than we've already got. So I think whatever way, therapy, finding out with your ADHD, whatever it is the more that we can understand oneself, the more that we can get to a higher performance place, the better our business is going to be, and general life in a whole, isn't it?
I think it goes right the way down to whether you're a business operator or if you're just an employee or whatever. I think there's so much entitlement in today's society, and it's like, I'll blame the government, or blame school, or blame my parents, or like we were talking before, blame the principal contractor why my business isn't working. We're actually taking personal ownership of your own happiness and your own trajectory in your own life is important, because nobody's going to do it for you. No one's going to be any more invested in you than you are in you. And if you're not invested in you, then don't complain about it when someone who is passing you.
Exactly that. Yeah, and we always talk, and you've probably seen this before, above and below the line. Above the line is ownership, like you said, responsibility and accountability. And below the line is blame, excuse, denial. And the amount of people that spend their time in below the line, and it's hard when you make yourself accountable when you're not quite happy with your past decisions, but then when you're fully holding yourself accountable, you're taking ownership of a situation, you're responsible for your life, you can go, well, today, if I'm not happy with my past, today I have everything and the whole power in my ability to do something about it tomorrow, and so forth.
There's a scientific thing, isn't there? Like every 7 years or something, our body pretty much generates all of its own cells again. Every 7 years, you're essentially a new version of you biologically. So like if you use that analogy, it's like when you default on your loans, after 6 years, the default's gone. You can start again. So you think about, just because it's happened in the past and it was bad and you regret it or whatever, you can either live there or you can just be a new version of you that's better because of that. I'm definitely a better person for all of the crap that I've been through, and a lot of it I've brought upon myself.
We do bring all this chaos into our own lives, and you're exactly right. And I laugh there because me and my wife, she's always like, what version are you on? You're about 3,000 now. It's just like continuously reinventing yourself and working yourself out and trying to become a better person. And I think that's because you can either get stuck where you are moaning about everything, or you can just take life by the scruff of the neck and say, there's a challenge here, how do I work it out?
Exactly. I think if we're not growing, and to be the same version of you for 40, 50 years, That sounds boring.
It does. It
I don't know,
definitely
it sounds
does.
horrendous.
Exactly that. So talking about challenges, what do you think the biggest challenge we've got in the industry is right now?
Recruitment.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
We need to be, and everybody needs to play their part here. The large clients need to play a part. The principal contractors need to play a part, but also us as subcontractors or small level business owners, we need to play a part. We need academies set up. We need to get more funding into the industry, and the funding should be coming from the top down.
Yeah.
They want the services provided. They want them at a high level. Well, invest in the industry there. Either invest in better rates or allocate some funding so that we can get more people. One of the things I've realized, so a lot of the principal contractors we work for, they're stuck on a schedule of rates, which we spoke about before. They can't do anything with those schedule of rates. So complaining to them all day long about
some
the
are
rates.
9-year contracts.
So complaining to the principals about their rates is like complaining to the government about politics. So what we need to do is work our business models out to allow for the rates that are supplying, or go and do something else. It's effectively, that's it. So what I've worked out is actually you need to be able to focus on your unit price economics, which is getting that individual team of 3 men, van, chipper, whatever, down to as low a cost as you can so you can operate at those rates. The key to that is recruitment. You need to get new blood coming in, and at the lower level. Well, we're just circulating the same arborists around again and again who want more money each year because of inflation, or they're getting more experience.
I see it like here. We've got like 3 or 4 big companies, and like they're all sort of people just change their T-shirts every few years. It's the same group of people who are floating around, and as you say, there's no one new coming in.
And because there's no newness to it, there's no competition from below coming. You just get a very stale and bitter sort of mood. You stand on a utility shutdown or a nighttime railway job or something, it's the same characters smoking a load of fags, going, this is shit, the job's shit, rubbish shit, managers are shit. And it becomes a little bit like, I'll just go do something else then. It's like sitting here complaining about it. Again, going back to personal ownership, it's like, just change it then, or try and do something better.
Or make yourself more useful. I think the people that I see that do well in this industry and make themselves the most useful, they're the most committed, reliable, they solve challenges for their bosses, they get paid the most, they will get put up into the best positions, they'll get the best work, and make yourself useful. And I think that's the
thing is with it is actually there is actually loads of upward scope in our industry. With the smaller firms like myself and that, we are growing, so we're creating new opportunities, but effectively you can build a good career with a company like mine, and then you can go and take that career and you can go anywhere in the industry. The sky is your limit. Because one of the things that a lot of the principal contractors are missing, and their clients, is actual operational know-how. Yes, they can run KPIs, they can get a contract and got bid writers, but they don't actually know what it takes to run these contracts. So any of the younger lads that have got ambitions to the sky's the limit sort of thing, you can build straight away from feeding a chipper to being an operations director on a big salary.
Earning more than most small businesses in this country.
Exactly that. And the thing is, that's a value loop we're missing. Because we haven't got that value loop, we're stuck with lower rates because we're not able to explain to the clients why we need better rates, because the people who are in position to explain the rates don't even know how the rates work themselves, and we're just in this loop of and it just keeps going round and round.
There just doesn't seem to be, as you say, enough people coming in, because from what I see is you get people coming in, they do well, and they either, like you say, go up, or generally what tends to happen is they go, well, I can only earn 130, 140 quid on the card for somebody, so I'm either going to turn into a subby and bounce around, or I'm going to start my own business and then be the bottleneck like we were talking about earlier, and just get stuck on the tools in a 2 or 3 man team trying to do domestic and other work. And then we then kind of lose the workforce who are going to build the industry and be part of it, who are going to help us build good businesses, go up to be high level managers. And there isn't enough new blood coming in. And I know the Arb Association are trying to do, I spoke to John Parker recently, he said he's going to be going into schools, but I mean, there's thousands of schools in this country. Him going around to each school is going to take him decades to do. Like, in my opinion, there needs to be more through the news, more through like PR, like getting the Arb Association onto This Morning or whatever, like Blue Peter, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, they need to be out there.
It's got to be,
It's
a growing industry. It's a growing industry. I mean, I've seen some crazy stats, but I've seen it in reality now. we've got growth rates year on year for most species are getting like 30% year on year. So I went back to a site on the utilities that we cut 5 years ago, coppiced a load of willows, and it's 8 meters of growth. Like they're already back in the power lines again. And you look at the side of most highways, motorways, railway lines.
Yeah, half dead ash everywhere at the moment.
Yeah, there's half a there's just growth is just encroaching because you can't keep on top of it. And it is a permanent source of work. And it's a career. It's a lifelong career. With there is loads of room to move up in it. Solving the recruitment issue is something we're really tirelessly working on. We're looking at we're looking at colleges, Arb colleges. We are looking at schools, job centres, anything and everything to try and find a dynamic where we can get a conveyor belt of keen workers coming in. It doesn't even necessarily need to be young. It could just be some people that don't want to work in a pie factory. They just want to pivot outside.
Yeah.
And we're having to invest a lot of our own money to train them up. It works out for us to get all of the PP to make them compliant, and the basic set of qualifications, we're looking about $3,000 per operative. So it's not cheap.
It's not, and I think it's even more than that, really, isn't it? I've always said between 3 and 5. So by the time you end up putting in, and we've had it before when we've done that, and someone's left on the day of payday and gone and worked for someone else, they've been offered more money. Fortunately, because we've got a contract in place, we get that money back. But it's one of those things, isn't it? It's trying to get more people in the industry, trying to find the right people, because as you say, there is the same group of tree surgeons who are bouncing around, and it needs to be fresh meat, doesn't it?
I think with any business, you need to get the payment, the wage structure correctly. It's again like a pyramid. There needs to be more operators earning the lower end of the salary with trajectory growth, so they can want to move up the tree, they can, so to speak, no pun intended. But there needs to be more not lower value, but lower paid operators in any business. Otherwise, you become too top heavy, and then that's where you become too niche, and then any fluctuations in workload really kicks you in the ass. But recruitment's the number one issue. I think. Like backtracking to lads that decide to go down the subby route, it actually pains me, and I've seen so many lads do it, and I don't know what they're doing. But again, they've got such a short-term lifespan. They chase that short-term gratification loop. Oh, I can earn £300, £400 as a rock star climber. We know you can. The next time an economy drops, you're going to be ringing my phone. Like, you're best off as young operators getting in with company. You might earn in the short term less, but you're building a career that will last longer. It's like investing or anything like that. You've got to take the short-term pain for the longer-term wins. If we take the short-term wins, we'll take long-term losses.
Well, because everyone's thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about 5 years' time. They're not thinking about a year's time, 10 years' time. They're just thinking about, I need to get paid an extra bit of money this week so I can go out the weekend, do whatever, spend time with family, but I just need my pay packet at the end of the week. They're not thinking, what do I need to do today to get to somewhere that's going to help me out?
But it's crazy. Like, you see it happen with so many operators. So you put two parallels, a lad that goes subcontracting climbing and a lad that knits the subcontracting climbing, takes off. He's earning very good money. He's in high demand. He's operating crazy. And your bloke that stayed at a company is going slowly, but he's building all sorts of different skill sets. He's learning more about the maintenance. He's learning leadership, learning management. He's learning the IT. He's learning how different contracts work. And then at a certain point, there's a tipping balance where your subby climber becomes less efficient. He hasn't built up any of those other necessary skills for, let's be honest, after 40 years, and that's if you're lucky. Whereas your lad who stayed on a little bit less money at the beginning, he's really starting to kick into gear now.
He's been given opportunities within the business.
Exactly.
And that's what we've always done. Like Mike, my commercial manager, he started as a groundie. He's now my commercial manager, pretty much running the business for me. And there's opportunities there for people. He wouldn't be climbing now. He'd be off the tools trying to work out what to do. And I think you're exactly right with that.
It's so sad because they end up they're the rock stars for that. They're a Premiership football player, essentially. Then they realise they haven't built up any skill sets, and the only job that's relatable to them is either they carry on climbing, which it's killing them to do. They then try to join a company on PAYE working for me and realise they're not going to get paid anywhere near what they're getting paid as subby climbers. So there are other options to become a surveyor.
A lot of subby climbers that don't pay tax either.
Exactly.
I'm sure there are good ones out there that do.
Of course
they don't have insurance, Lola, etc.
But they end up then, the surveyors, the managers for these big companies, that's the only work they can find, and they're so big that they're not even then doing the job well there. So it's just, people are looking at everything in a short-term gratification loop that I think is killing the industry.
I agree.
You've got to look forward, and think, actually, what am I going to do when I can't climb anymore? Because unfortunately, unlike the Premier League football players, you ain't earning enough money to retire when you finish. So, it catches you in the end.
No, I completely agree. I don't really like the subby culture in this industry. We use a couple of subbies, but only out of the pure fact that we've got this staff shortage. And I think you're right. People try and do it as a short-term thing, but they're not looking at the bigger picture. And actually, I also think by the time what subbies think, if they're earning, say, £200 a day, which seems to be the average wage for a subby climber, and then you've got like guys on 140 as on the books, but the subbies are thinking at the moment, I'm earning good money, but they're not taking into consideration buying their new kit, repairing kit, lowering their kit, insurance, the time they have off sick, holidays, etc.
Economical down to...
Actually, probably when you work it out, you may as well just be on the cards for someone.
I did crunch the numbers a while ago, because I was getting a little fed up with some subbies we were using. I crunched the numbers on. I looked at what the workflow had been because of economic cycles, and I used our own domestic inflow to make the calculation. What I actually found out is over the course of a 3-year period, somebody on £130 a day PAYE with paid holidays earned more money over 3 years than a subby on £250. Because they're there, they get paid every day of the year, they get paid holidays. They're not looking, everyone's looking at it short term, and there are some fantastic subbies, I have to say, some phenomenal operators.
But I think a proper subby in my way is what I'd call a contract climber.
Exactly.
Who turns up with all of their climbing kit, everything, even their own rigging kit, who could do anything. Their saws are sharp, their kit's loaded, they've got insurance, and that is a contract climber that you go, right, I need a specialist job doing.
Exactly.
I'm going to speak to Toby or whoever it is, and they're going to come in. I think that's a specialist contract climber. I think it's the subbies who are still doing 5 days a week for a company. They're not working for other companies, or they might do 3 here, 2 the other, and they've not got all the right kit. They can't do everything. And that's the subby bit that I think. So you're right. There is a place for subcontract or contract climbers, but I just think the subby culture isn't great for the industry.
It's just a result of the fact that we're all guilty of this. All of us employers are guilty of it as well. And the larger companies above, we're not investing enough in solving this recruitment problem, and it leaves that vacuum free for these subbies to operate in. And probably another caveat as well, which I've noticed. There used to be a thing, you've probably seen it yourself, the team leaders would always be the lead climber. Whoever the best climber was ended up being the team leader. They don't always make good team leaders.
No,
I've seen team leaders that are substandard. They can climb a couple of small trees, but they just run a team.
But I think that's the natural progression that people, because they want more money, they go, right, I've got to be groundy, climber, team leader, and climber, team leader. You're exactly right. But actually, it doesn't have to be that way. You can still get paid a lot for a climber, and then you could have a really good groundy who maybe previously been a climber who can now run the site. And I think that's more important, isn't it?
It's like, I love using the football analogies because it works so well, but it's like your coach isn't going to be better than Ronaldo, but he coaches Ronaldo.
He understands how to coach.
He understands a different element of it. There's a manager, he isn't scoring all the goals. He manages the team so they win consistently. And I think climbers, I used to be one of those, though, very ego driven. I'm a badass climber. I climb anything. I'm the shit, But essentially, there's so much more that's going on when you really run a business and you realize just what is going on and what is at stake, not just financially. I think there's too much short-term gratification going on, and people just want to grab the prize now, and they're not thinking later down the line.
Grab the prize, get on the beers in the bag at the weekend, and then work it out and pick the pieces up back on Monday. It's generally the way, isn't it? And I've been there myself. So really great points. I think we have to collectively as industry try and solve this problem with recruitment. I think the one thing is trying to improve wages, which we're all trying to do. I think that comes from bigger companies, it comes from smaller companies. It's kind of my mission with the mastermind. We had a staff meeting yesterday, and we sat around and we talked openly about pay and pay in the industry, and we were talking about like something's got to give in the sense that yes, we want to pay our guys more, but we need to earn more as a business. We're all being hit by inflation and cost living, and it's not just the guys who are doing the team that are doing the work, it's the businesses that are as well. So it's like minimum wage now is pretty much what I would call the same wage as a trainee or a groundie. And a lot of people will go and do something, what I would say, probably not as fun, but easier, like going and working McDonald's, and they get looked after with a good career path. Or you can go and get wet, soaking wet and be a tree surgeon. And a lot of people are choosing that. So the money's got to come into it as well. Like the money needs to go up in this industry. Whether big companies don't like it or not, or smaller companies are the bottleneck, like we need to have the ability to be able to charge more so we can pay more. And then that will also attract people, because when you're young, you go, how can I earn some good money? I want to have a house, a car. And you look at it and like the average homeowners just going up and up and up and up. And what people will look at 16, 18 and go, well, I can go and be a tree surgeon and probably earn 30 grand-ish a year, or I can go and do something else and earn 40 grand. I can go into sales and earn 40, 50 grand, and I can then make some money to be able to live and provide for my family. So I think, yes, we need to train more people. We need to be bringing people in, but what the industry needs to happen is everything needs to level up. And we need to be able to pay more money as well, don't we?
Yeah. And I think most of the younger generation, they're looking at, YouTube influencers and the things like that. I mean, me and you both dabble on social media, so we know the power of it. You wouldn't blame them. They keep saying, oh, well, the kids aren't up for much. It's like, why would you want to go and get wet? There's so many other options. So we've got to make it more appealing. I remember what I loved when I first started was all the shiny high-vis, the vehicles, the flashing beacons on jobs. In fact, I thought, well, this is big stuff we're doing here. Like, this is important work, where I used to just walk around with my high-vis jumper on a building site, tied up in a knot behind me, thinking I look cool with some shorts and a pair of rigger boots. And then all of a sudden you're head to toe in real fancy gear. Like, you think it's fancy, and it is. We need to make it more of an industry of people like, I want to be that. Like how the army sell to young lads and ladies, come and be part of the army, be part of the best, is like a really good way we should be looking at this industry. Come and be part of something that's doing real, tangible, difficult, dangerous work that is essentially, it's a bit of a caveat again, but it's a bit tragic really what's happened to the blue collar operator in this country. You used to go down the local pubs, like my dad's generation probably tailed off just as I was becoming an adult, where they were celebrated. You were celebrated for going out and working on the infrastructure, working in the coal mines, going out and doing these hard jobs. Now it's like all of a sudden you're sort of frowned upon, or you're just like, oh God, you're going to do that in the mud. And it's sad really, because, what we're doing in the infrastructure industry, tree surgery industry, whatever, any of the trades, is we're providing the means for this country to run. So that we've got all the nice stuff we've got. So people should be celebrated a bit more for it.
And it is just an adrenaline-filled, fucking amazing job. Like when you're up and you're in a tree and you've got a great view and your adrenaline, your heart's going, and you get down and you feel like an absolute beast because you've done something. Your knees have been shaken at some point because you've had a sketchy bit to do. And that is, if you could bottle that up and give that to people, I'm sure they'd want to go and do it. The bit that they don't want to do is when they're in the middle of a bog, like, slash cutting willow underneath a line and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately,
being in a team as well.
That team feel is great.
Sometimes those sites,
the camaraderie and stuff.
Exactly. Sometimes those sites when you piss wet through, and it's been tough, but the banter's flowing. Everyone's having a laugh. Everyone's like, well, it's soaking wet. It can't get much worse.
And you get it done. And that's what we say, a team pulling together. And you kind of like, at the end of the day, you go for a beer or whatever, and you're like, yes, we fucking done it, boys. Like, it's cool. Yeah, cool. So what do you think, if you could tell your younger self when you started out in this industry, what advice would you give yourself?
What advice would I give myself? It would probably be sort of like check your ego a little bit, I think.
Yes.
I was like,
I can relate to that.
I was terrible. I wanted to dominate. This is exactly how I operate. Every shutdown I was on, I wanted me and my team to just dominate all the other teams. And we did, essentially, on most of our contracts. I was very fortunate. My brother's a badass climber. So, I am. The lads that we hired were all good climbers. We went on a mission to dominate all the other cutting teams. I was very, very aggressive with my negotiations with the contractors, and it has burnt me. I now have flipped that dynamic where I'm much more diplomatic.
Self-aware.
I'm trying to hire people in my local area, and they're only getting used to the idea. Actually, he's all right. He's not this hard ass that's just like, get it done. We'll kill the competition. Just check your ego a bit. And I think we had a few non-compliances. We've had a couple of failures, as you do as a 10-year business, that bring you down to earth, and a good dose of humble pie. It's a hard thing to eat, but it's a valuable lesson to just check my ego a bit. Probably.
I agree. Like, I think when I lost it all, my ego before that, I was very similar to what you just said. Like, very like dominant in situations. And when I lost it all, my ego took a big beating. But then what I did is learn a lot about myself and put that to one side. And then actually, when you put you on one side, it opens a whole other world of stuff that you don't see because your ego gets in the way of it. A lot of self-awareness, understanding situations and not trying to dominate then brings you a lot more opportunity, a lot more joy and a lot more learning as well, because like your ego gets in the way of learning. I don't think I'd have mentors and even started a mastermind if my ego was in the way, because I'd just be like, fuck that, I don't need that.
Ego is all self, so like it's all me in my world. I'm the star player. It is to a degree, and I probably have had them tendencies in the past.
I have too. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast could probably relate.
And it takes away from the team. At the end of the day, we're not Sigma males, we're not solopreneurs, we work as a team. You are as good as your team, and being ego-driven puts you at odds with your own team, puts you at odds with your wider team, which might be the contracts that you work on.
And it's all about the team. Like, it's all about the only way. Like you said earlier at the beginning of this, like, and your brother and your mum and the rest of the team, like the team has carried me at times, and if you can't do it on your own, so you have to have a team, and you have to have a team that's working together and all pulling in the same direction, right?
Think about it like the old Royal Navy, them old wooden ships that they would go off into these crazy oceans fighting battles, and you've got the captain's there and he might be at the wheel or whatever, but there's a whole host of team. That ship doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything unless the team's all working together. And culture is something that gets bounded around a lot, but it is so important.
It is.
And you are the centerpiece of that culture. And so being ego-driven, dominant, over alpha, over hyper with just wanting to be, I am the big I am, you just kill that culture. No one wants to work for somebody like that. They want somebody that's willing to go, fucked up lads.
But they say you don't leave bad jobs, but you do leave bad bosses. And I agree with that for sure.
I've definitely had that happen. Bad employees that have left that have been good lads. Probably me and Adam we can be very alpha, and we calm it down. Now we're both 30, so we're leveling out. We've both got kids.
I think age does that. Family does that.
But we used to work people to the limit, because we could work at that limit, and we'd be dragging people through all sorts of sites and hours,
and they just burn out.
Burn out.
So what does the future look like for you? What's the plans for the future?
So I've been busy working on a strategy, how we're going to essentially become a big player in our region. And essentially there is a gap that I've seen that's forming in the market. People are going one of three ways. They either just stay small and operate as a small firm, and they're in the day-to-day a lot of the time themselves, even climbing, which again, as I've discussed, is finite. Or they've got the specialist route, which I've fallen into that trap and get all the specialist equipment. Or they go the principal contractor route and they want to win contractors. So it seems like everybody wants to win contracts now. And all they're doing is driving the price down. The big players in the end will win. They win because of the scale of the economics of scale. They'll just crunch the numbers down. But it doesn't seem to be many companies that are going, you know what, we do really well is we just send good teams of lads out. So our strategy is that simple. We just want to supply operational resources to the principal contractors. We like to be loyal. Ground Control, we've been loyal with them for 9.5 years. We do work with other PCs as well. That works quite well for us. Obviously, in dynamics that don't compete with the contracts we're on Ground Control, because you've got to look at
conflict of interest.
Exactly. You should honour that as well.
Loyalty and relationships, and if you don't, you just end up burning it. And I've said to a lot of people have trolled me on Arb Talk and stuff, saying you and your mastermind, not everyone can grow massive businesses. I'm like, it's not about growing massive businesses, it's about growing a business. And I think 3 teams can make you a very good, healthy lifestyle. And it's not just about the money, it's about having a business. And we talked about it earlier, that you can go and spend some time with your family. You're not working every hour of the day. You can enjoy life, and you still have to work. It's still hard work, but I don't really believe in work-life balance, because it seems to be, but still being able to have time.
You're working on your terms. That's what we get a business for, is the freedom of working on our terms. So if it's a rough, hard day, well, that's my hard day to deal with. I'm not at anybody's beck and call. And that's essentially what I think people get wrong, is they think, not everybody can be a massive company. No, you don't need to be. It's not about what you make, it's what you keep. That's the fun part of business, is playing with the numbers and working your margins out.
And because we're making money and keeping hold of it, it's a whole different conversation.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of where people think you've got to go, the ego comes back in. I remember I used to want to be the biggest and best arbor company in the south of England, and then I realised I actually just want to be the best. I don't want to be the biggest, because I've had 47 staff and I know what that feels like, and it's not a lot of fun.
Being the biggest doesn't mean the best.
It doesn't mean the best. Quite often it means the complete opposite.
Exactly.
The biggest is the worst.
Exactly.
We definitely know
so
that.
You look at, I love the military. I haven't served, but I do hire ex-military lads and have done a lot over the years, and very keen to hire more because they're great blokes. But it's a great example of the military. Like, put the bog standard infantry company and then take a segment of the SAS, and the SAS will probably whoop their butt in a pitch, even though they're considerably smaller. It doesn't matter how big you are, it's how good you are.
That's how good the team is again.
The team journalism, that's back to the personal ownership. Don't just muck around in your company criticising your MD, criticising your manager, criticising the contract you're on, but you can't even turn up on time. You don't turn up with your kit looked after, and you moan about the job.
You don't maintain your kit.
You go down the bottom where no one's looking on the site, and you just stack everything like crap and just don't even bother about paying attention to detail. We've all got to pull together, and that's how a small company can beat big companies in the long term, just by being professional,
offering a good service, and being a good team. It
all
comes back to team, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100% team. Big lesson that I've learned really is trying to be the centerpiece of everything is just ridiculous, and it's like we're social animals as well. Being part of a team brings me some of the best satisfaction. We've got a young operator that works for us called Carl Whitehouse, phenomenal cutter. He did his first day team leading on his own yesterday. Paul McCulloch, his boss, set him up with a site to go and cut. Big nasty hedge under a 132. Probably 2 days worth of work. But he pulled it off yesterday, put a late shift in with the lad working with him, George, and they got back late on. And that satisfaction for me to see him. He's so proud of what he's achieved. He's covered in scratch marks, climbing all day, and the pride that I take in seeing him come from someone with no skills at all. We've completely trained him up to now leading his first team. It's just great.
It's a good buzz, isn't it? I find this year being back in HRG and been working with a team and even doing a staff meeting yesterday, like that when you get a team and everyone's pulling in the same direction, that's a buzz in itself. That's part of it. Lee, I've really enjoyed today. It's been a really good chat, great value for everyone listening. If people want to follow you, I know you're really heavy on LinkedIn, so is that the best place to come and find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I've just set up a profile on Instagram as well, which is L_J_Morris. You can find me on there. Yeah, apart from that, you can find the Morris Arb website. Just type it into Google, you'll find us.
Perfect. Well, I wish you all the best of luck, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more conversations in the future. But thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, brilliant.
Cool. So thank you everyone for listening. If you've enjoyed today, please like, subscribe and share with as many people as you can. My mission on this podcast is to level up the industry, get as much good information, these good conversations with like Lee and other people out there so we can support everybody in this industry. Take care.